Welcome to our channel. For our new listeners, this is a space where we explore two main themes: the principles of personal finance and distilled life experiences. Once again, welcome. And now, let's begin today's topic. When I published this episode, you likely saw the title and guessed our theme for today, which is the question, can money buy happiness? This is a big and rather important question. However, before we seek the answer to this question, we need to answer an even bigger one, which is, what is our purpose in this life? Today is full of big, profound questions, isn't it? But I believe that many of us have asked ourselves such questions at least once. Because in truth, these are very important questions. And if we can't find the answers, we can easily fall into a state of living on autopilot, meaning we just do what everyone else around us is doing, and slowly we forget what it is that we truly need. Personally, in my younger years, I didn't think too much about these things, but the older I get, the more I find myself pondering such questions. And after a long journey of searching, I discovered that the answer is actually very simple, encapsulated in just one word: happiness. It's not about wealth or success or fame. I believe all of those things are merely vehicles to get us to one final destination, which is happiness. So, what is happiness? And why do we sometimes hear the phrase, money can't buy happiness? Or a more common saying, what's the point of having so much money? And the people who say such things are often those who have a lot of it. So why is that? And if happiness is the ultimate goal, but money can't buy it, then why does everything in our lives revolve around making money? Should we perhaps reconsider the pursuit of money? These are the questions I wrestled with for a long time. In today's episode, I will share with you the journey of how I found these answers for myself. Through this, I also hope to share with you a framework, or to put it more figuratively, a map that I have drawn for myself to prepare for my journeys. Hopefully, with this map, you can use it to find your own answers. This map is divided into 3 tiers. The first tier, I call it the survival tier. Anyone familiar with marketing probably knows about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. In it, the lowest level consists of the basic human needs, without which we cannot survive. These are things like having enough food to eat, enough clothes to wear, medicine when we're sick, and a roof over our heads to shelter us from the elements. That's why I use the word shelter and not house or home. Because at a minimum, the essential thing we need is a place that protects us from the dangers of the surrounding environment. House or home comes into play when we start talking about comforts. So these are a few examples of the most basic needs without which we could hardly survive. If we are unfortunate enough to lack them, then frankly, our life would be like an ordeal. Imagine eating today without knowing if there will be food tomorrow, wearing ragged clothes, having no medicine when sick. That would be a very difficult life. And at this point, all of our focus would be solely on meeting these basic needs. For people whose lives are a daily struggle for food, who don't have enough clothes to wear, we cannot possibly talk to them about things like freedom or passion. And the solution to all the problems in this first tier is in fact very simple. It's just money. Money will help us solve all the problems in this first tier. We can use money to buy food, clothes, medicine when we're sick, and use money to buy or rent a house for shelter. Everything is very simple and clear. The reason I use the word simple here is that the answer is very straightforward, meaning that with money, we can solve everything. No other factor is needed. Of course, For those in this situation, the matter of how to get money is another aspect and will be very difficult for them. But my point here is that the way to solve it is very simple. That is why I always encourage you on the journey to financial independence, because that journey is the most effective way to help us avoid falling into this state. If you recall, the initial stages of the financial independence journey are actually about helping you get out of debt and then gradually escape financial dependence on someone else, whether it's parents or charities. From there, we can gradually have enough money to meet our own basic living needs, and those basic living needs are precisely Tier 1 in this diagram.
Once we have enough money to cover these needs, that's also when we start to have the basic foundation to seek solutions for the problems in Tier 2. And this second tier is freedom. To achieve freedom, we must break free from the constraints and insecurities in our lives, because only when we completely eliminate these constraints can we begin to have the freedom to build the components of the third tier, which is the happiness tier. So, what are these insecurities? The first insecurity is financial insecurity. In the first tier, we see that we can solve everything with money. And the way the vast majority of people do it is by trading their labor for money, then using that money to meet their basic needs. However, if we stop there, our lives will be dependent on money. And as I've analyzed many times, this dependency will keep our lives in a constant state of anxiety. Anxious because just losing a job means we immediately return to the first tier. Therefore, the way to definitively eliminate this insecurity is to figure out how to completely escape the influence of money. Otherwise, we will forever be working for money and we'll have no mental space left to seek the values of happiness in the higher tiers. Next, the second freedom I set for myself is freedom from material possessions. As I've shared with you in the series about minimalism, material possessions are things that hold us back a lot and make our lives increasingly burdensome. And those are the two biggest freedoms that I think everyone, one way or another, should have. In addition, each of us will have our own definitions of freedom. For some, it might be the freedom from worries about health or safety. They set a goal so that when a health issue arises, they can be assured of receiving the best care. Or they wish to live in a safe environment free from sudden risks. For others, like myself, another important factor is the freedom to go anywhere, to live in any country I want. So, those are some examples of the definition of freedom. Everyone's will be different. Therefore, you need to sit down and determine what your freedom looks like. Now, if you look at the right column of this tier, you'll see that I've written money plus mindset. That's because unlike the first tier, where almost all problems can be solved with money, in this second tier, besides accumulating a certain amount of money, we also have to build another aspect for ourselves, which is about mindset. As I've shared, to complete the journey of financial independence and a minimalist life, an indispensable element is that we must build a mindset of knowing what is enough. We cannot complete these journeys without building this mindset for ourselves. So those two factors, money and mindset, will help us gradually achieve the goals of freedom in this second tier. And only when this freedom is achieved can we then have the peace of mind to build the aspects of a higher tier, which is the happiness tier. This is the highest and also the most difficult tier to achieve. The reason it's difficult is because this is a tier that cannot be bought with money, but is mostly achieved through mindset and personal effort. Although the aspects in this tier cannot be bought with money, these mindsets can only be achieved after we have escaped the influence of money and material possessions. meaning after we have passed through step number 2.
Now, with this map in hand, let's try to find the answer to our original question. Can money buy happiness? Clearly, looking at this, we can see the answer is no. Money cannot buy happiness. However, even though money is not a sufficient condition for happiness, it is a necessary condition. Because without it, it would be very difficult to reach the happiness tier. And even if one achieves happiness, that happiness is very precarious. It can fall apart at any moment. A simple example is the saying we often hear, "A thatched hut and 2 golden hearts." It sounds nice, but we see that it hardly exists in reality, because there's a simple fact that no matter how much you love each other, if you have to struggle with daily necessities all the time, that happiness is very fragile. And it's not just in relationships. We can take another example of artists who have found joy in their lives, and for those who are very passionate, you could even say they found their life's purpose in painting. But without a foundation of finances and freedom, that passion will eventually have to give way to the problems of daily living. Conversely, now imagine if that person already had all the freedoms in Tier 2. They could choose to paint for the rest of their lives without any issue. That's why I say happiness built on a solid foundation is much more secure. Some people don't see this whole picture, so they just focus on going straight to Tier 3, while the lower tiers are not yet built. For example, going straight for tranquility while still being in debt is, in most cases, almost impossible to achieve. Looking around, I only see one group that can do this, and that is monastics. They go straight to one goal, which is to find peace, to find their life's purpose. As for basic needs, they live on the donations of followers. But as I've said before, even in these cases, the vast majority of monks still have to worry about the economic aspects and other issues for their monastery. That is the case for monks. As for the vast majority of ordinary people like us, it's almost impossible to do it that way. To achieve a stable and lasting happiness, we must start from the bottom up. We must build that happiness on a solid foundation for it to be strong and long-lasting. Happiness is a luxury that even the wealthy are not guaranteed to have, so it becomes many times more difficult if we are still struggling with the constraints of money and material possessions. This doesn't mean that we have to wait until we have all these things before we can seek and build the things that bring us happiness. But the happiness we build will be much more secure if it is created on the solid foundations of Tier 2. And similarly, to get to Tier 2, we must have Tier 1. For this part, I have to use the word must, not should or should not, because without Tier 1, there is no way we can get to Tier 2. The proof is that we cannot talk about this freedom or that freedom with people who are living hand-to-mouth. We also cannot talk about a minimalist life with people who are living in shacks, whose belongings are already scarce. And similarly, we cannot talk about the freedom to travel with people who are sick and have no money to buy medicine. If we talk to them about these things, they would curse us. In these cases, they are in the survival stage. Their goal is to survive from day to day. After lunch, the goal is to earn enough for dinner. When sick, figuring out how to get a little money to buy a pill is already a struggle. They will have no mental energy left to think about higher things like freedom or passion. So, those are the main points I wanted to share with you today. Through the journey of finding the answer to our original question, I have also shared with you the map that I have used to guide my life for many years. And even now, I'm still using this map to continue on my journeys. I'm sharing my map with you not for you to follow my exact path, but so that perhaps through it, you can have a general framework to determine your own path. You need to determine what you need in the freedom stage, how your freedom is defined, what components it includes, and how to achieve those components. After achieving freedom, what will your happiness be?
and what path will lead you to achieve that happiness. When you have built such a map for yourself, I believe it will help you a lot in your life, just as it has helped me a lot in my journeys over the years. I will end this episode here. I hope these shares will be as helpful to you as they have been to me. If you find this content valuable, please share it with your friends and family. See you in the next episodes.